The Dutch defense is one of the most flexible openings to play as black, and that's true because you can play it against pretty much anything that white throws at you. If your opponent does not play e4, then you probably can play the Dutch defense against that. So today we're going to take a look the Dutch defense versus almost everything. So if your opponent plays anything besides e4, if they don't go for this move as their first move, probably you can play the Dutch defense against that. And the Dutch defense begins when you play the move f5. And your basic setup here is the classical Dutch defense. And this was played by many players, just like Simon Williams, Grandmaster Simon Williams, also known as the Ginger GM. And even Hikaru Nakamura has played this opening quite a lot too. So the system is basically like this. We're going to push these two pawns, develop the knight here, and we're going to play this bishop here in castle. And then we're going to push d6, and we go from there. This is going to be our main setup here to play the Dutch. So after our opponent plays knight f3, we play e6. Let's say they play g3, thinking about fianchettoing the bishop, we're going to play knight f6 and follow our structure, which is bishop here, castle, d6, and then we can think about other moves like bringing this queen to the game, this knight, pushing this pawn right here. There are many other possibilities, and even planting this knight here in this very strong square of e4, and it's going to be a strong knight for us. So after, let's say, bishop g2, they're going to fianchetto the bishop. We play bishop e7 following our plan. White's going to castle, we're going to castle. After c4, we play d6, very key move here. We have to play this move. So now we have the basic setup of the classical Dutch defense. And this same setup, just try to memorize this pawn structure where you have the pawns right here in this shape, and you have the bishop developed to this square, the knight here castled. This is the basic setup that we're going to follow against pretty much anything that white plays. After knight to c3, we can put our knight to e4. After queen to c2, we can trade knights here. And from here on, we can play a5, trying to advance on the queen side. After a move, let's say b3, we can play bishop to f6. This bishop is preparing this square here for the advancement. So one of the main ideas of the Dutch defense is to advance here to e5. But to do that, in order to do that, we have to prepare this move first by playing, for example, this move right here. And this move is also aiming at some pieces here. So white is probably going to answer against that, bishop b2. After knight to c6, also preparing this push now, we can go for this move. After queen to d2, taking the queen out of the diagonal, we can finally play e5 here. After takes, opponent is first going to check before taking the queen, and then they can trade queens. We take back with the rook. If they play rook after d1, we just move the rook away. We're not going to trade here. Knight to e1, trying to reroute that knight and open the scope for the bishop. We play a4. And after trades, we're going to, and knight to d3, we're going to play e4, kicking that knight away. They're going to trade here the bishops because they're staring at each other first. And after we take the knight there, they drop back the bishop. We take this pawn, attacking the rook and forcing it to a passive position. And this position here is minus 0.7 for black. It's a good position for us. So this is basically what you can do to play against d4. So this is the basic setup. If your opponent goes for d4, you can go for the Dutch defense. If they go for the English, you can go for the Dutch defense. If they play like a King's Indian attack or something similar, we can also go for the Dutch defense. Even if they go for the birds, which is like a symmetrical structure, we can go for the Dutch defense as well. Now we're going to take a look at the Dutch versus the London system. So your opponent is going to play the London system very often because that's what some chess players do. They only play the London. You're going to play f5, and they're going to go for the London setup, knight to f3, or right away developing the bishop. You're going to follow your plan, e6. After bishop to f4, you play knight f6. Your plan remains the same. And Dutch defense is very straightforward. You play the same moves, similar moves, and London system players also play only the same moves, so you know what to expect. But here, we can change plans a little bit, because since our opponent is not fianchettoing this bishop right here, This leaves us the opportunity to do it ourselves. So we can play b6 and fianchetto the bishop on b7. After bishop to d3, expected from a London player, we fianchetto. They're going to play knight b to d2 or castle. And then we play bishop to d6, threatening this bishop here. They're going to take. If they don't take and they just drop back, what you can do is you can just develop this queen, castle, maybe bring this knight here and prepare a push of this pawn, or maybe even this pawn. So it's an easy game to play. A lot of London players like to do this and put this bishop back. We can just develop the queen, castle, develop this knight, and we have an easy game to go on. But if they take the bishop, we just take back with the c pawn. And after, let's say, c3, which is a typical move in the London as well, we can castle, they can castle. And after d5, we have a very strong structure here that is similar to like a stone wall structure. And after, let's say, a3, we can play knight to e4. We have this very strong knight here. Rook to c1, rook to f6, trying to bring this rook to the game. We can bring it here. We can bring this rook to the game later on. It's this queen to the game. It's a very interesting game for us as black here too. Now let's take a look what to do as black if your opponent plays the English opening. We can also go for the Dutch in that case too. So the English, they can go ahead and play this move right away, or they can kind of delay that. So they might start playing like knight f3. We're just going to play f5. And after they try to fianchetto the bishop, we just follow our plan. Here, we can change a little bit because there are no pawns here, so we can go for this move a bit quicker. We can go for e5 a bit quicker. So after your opponent castles here, they're playing like a King's Indian attack setup, not defined yet what they're going to do. We can go ahead and play e5 straight away. We don't have to wait for this move. After d3, we just develop the bishop to e7 like we always do. We just play d5 quicker here. And after they go for c4, and finally here, they are defining that they're going for an English-like setup. They could have gone for this move right away, and we would still be playing the same moves. We can castle, of course. After knight to c3, we can play a5, starting to advance on the queen side. This is a very typical move in the Dutch as well. After rook to b1, we can take the queen out of this very dangerous diagonal here, because probably this queen is going to come in here and try to do some discovery. So we're going to, just prevent that from happening. A3, we play queen to e8, trying to bring the queen towards the king side for a quick attack. After b4, we can simply ignore that and bring the queen to h5. We're now threatening to attack here and win, checkmate our opponent. Queen to b3, the queen was going to go there. After f4, opponent has to respond against that. Knight to d5, we just trade. And we're gonna bring more pieces to the game. After this trade, we can bring the other knight, knight to d7, and then knight to f6, bringing the other knight to the game. Rook to a1, we could trade rooks here. We're not going to do that. We just slide the rook away from that. And after they bring the other rook, we can bring this bishop to the game, the other bishop that was still sitting in the starting position. After the opponent plays bishop to e1, we can bring the knight even forward, knight to g4. They're going to be attacking on the other side. We ignore that and try to open up the position. Bringing the other rook now, rook to f6, rook lift to prepare checkmate here. After the opponent brings queen to a4, we trade the bishops. Rook to h6, trying to checkmate here. After the opponent plays knight to g1, trying to prevent checkmate. We check the king. King has to move to f1, and here there's no escape. We have this very strong checkmate here, knight to h2 checkmate. So this is a very interesting miniature we have here against King's Indian setup, or kind of a English opening as well. This shows the flexibility of the Dutch defense. If your opponent goes for anything besides this move, besides e4, we can basically play the Dutch against that. So it's a very flexible system, and you don't have to memorize as much theory as if you play any other openings. So guys, if you liked this video and if you enjoyed learning how to play the Dutch versus anything, please remember to like this video, comment down below, subscribe to the channel for more, and as always, I see you guys in the next one.